with the progress so far. Oh, this is bad. Yeah, I do have some few errors with YouTube right now. What a bummer. I've been just a minute. Let's see if adjustment will go well. Okay, yeah, it looks like there's still error. Stream health is really bad. I think it's YouTube's issue because my internet is good. Hopefully it will come back later. Although while I'm continuing this, sorry about this, guys. But I will continue the art right now. Continue also with the story. If you miss some of the parts, maybe you can just check it out on your own. But for now, we'll continue the sketching. Oh, the illustration here, the rendering. All right, and if you want to
multiple times. However, even so, the scream of the death Psycho no Kyoji echoing in the divine realm was so wretched that they covered their ears. I thought it would go a little better than that, but this was at least a reasonable outcome, said Rod Corti, glancing at Kyoji as he fell apart, becoming particles of light that dispersed and disappeared. He stopped his forceful mana flow into the clairvoyance Tendu Tatsuya. Tendu staggered, Asagi and Akaki hastily rushed over to catch him before he fell. And then the image of Vandali, who had black-red tears of blood running from his eyes, disappeared. Oi, is Kyoji dead? Why? This divine realm place is supposed to be special, so that guy, Vandali, shouldn't have been able to lay a hand on us, right? With the tension broken, the reincarnated individuals, especially anguished. The reason Tendu was so exhausted was because of the shock and fatigue from having Rod Corti force mana into him to make him continue using clairvoyance. Can you move now? The Oracle and Dukuyu asked Izumi and Ran. The two of them let out great sighs. Yes, because Rod Corti isn't doing anything now. Phew, that was frightening, said Izumi. More importantly, can you explain what the hell you were thinking? Aran demanded, looking at Rod Corti. Very well. Wait a minute. Does that mean that whenever we look at him through the vision of Lambda's people, he can attack us? Izumi exclaimed. And why am I unharmed? No, if the effects are reflected, why did Kyoji die? We're just souls. We shouldn't have hearts or lungs, right? Asked Tendu. Even as the questions came one after another, Rod Corti answered them without hesitation. As you are familiar spirits, it is unlikely that he will notice your gaze. If you ask Shin, Rod Corti thought as he continued answering the next question. Next is the reason Kono Kyoji, a soul with no heart or lungs, was destroyed. To explain things in a way that is easy for you to understand. It is because the damage reflected by Vandali exceeded his vitality, his maximum hit points. I do not know if Vandali did this on purpose or unconsciously, but it was not the effect of the heart and lungs being stopped itself, but the damage caused by this effect that was reflected. Maximum hit points? Tender repeated. Perhaps having not played many games, he and several others had bewildered expressions on their faces. This concept doesn't exist on Earth or in Origin, but they do in Lambda, so don't make fun of it and listen, said Izumi. I know that, but we're souls, right? I don't get how we can break and fall apart just by having damage reflected onto us, Asagi said. It seemed that he had imagined that minds and souls were inviolable and more resilient than physical bodies. But Rod Corti said otherwise. You are in a state with no physical body, so the damage was done directly to Kono Kyoji's soul. You seem to be unaware of this, but you are like shellfish without shells. Even so, I protected him to some extent, allowing him to resist the damage from just Vandali. However, it seems that attacking the others as well was fatal. Even with the hostility skill increasing the damage, Kyoji had been able to resist the damage from just Vandali, but when he attacked Zedorus and the other two, he had been unable to resist all of it. As Rod Corti gave this explanation, he finished his maintenance work. It wasn't just that he had become accustomed to dealing with these errors, it was fortunate that Kono Kyoji's soul had been separated from the regular circle of transmigration and his reincarnation destination had not been decided yet. Having resolved both problems, Rod Corti looked back towards the reincarnated individuals, and though he had answered their questions, they and his familiar spirits, Izumi and Ran, were looking at him with pale, stiff faces. In other words, you made Kyoji, who was equivalent to a shellfish with no shell, attack. And you realized that Vandali was counter-attacking partway through but didn't warn him or stop him? Said Izumi. On top of that, you were protecting Kyoji? Then shouldn't you have been able to save Kyoji? By making your protection stronger or covering him. The fact that you didn't do that means you let him die? Said Asagi. The two of them were blaming Rod Corti, as if he had killed Kyoji himself. That is correct. What of it? Rod Corti said in response, sounding unconcerned. The reincarnated individuals shuddered. Didn't you say that you didn't want our numbers to be reduced for no reason? Inui Hajime shouted, his face pale. That is right, said Rod Corti, as if nothing were out of the ordinary. In exchange for the being known as Kono Kyoji, we learned of a part of Vandali's power. Rod Corti did not value the reincarnated individuals to the point that he would protect them at all costs. They were simply beings that he had gathered to accomplish his goals. It was only natural for him to use them in order to accomplish those goals. Also, some of the reincarnated individuals were more useful than others. There were some that he did not mind sacrificing as long as they were useful in the process. Like the currently screaming Inui Hajime, and Kono Kyoji. Kyoji's death scythe was powerful, but like Marionette, it was poorly matched against Vandali's death attribute magic, and he couldn't be relied upon as an assassin on his own. And he would be of almost no use at all for the future goal of developing the world. His level of knowledge could be replaced by any other reincarnated individual. He would have been fairly useful for hunting powerful monsters. However, that was something that could be achieved by granting the people already living in Lambda divine protections and abilities. And this was something that the gods of Lambda, such as Elder, the god of law and fate, were already doing. In Rod Corti's eyes, this was insufficient for a reincarnated individual that he had spent time and effort into bringing to Lambda. Kyoji himself had brought up the idea of using clairvoyance to try and erase Vandali. There had been no reason for Rodcorti to refuse. It would have been good if he had succeeded, and even in the unlikely event that he failed, Rodcorti would be able to observe a part of Vandali's powers. Those had been his intentions, but it seemed that Kyuji succeeding had been the more unlikely event. Incidentally, it was true that Rodcorti would have been able to save Kono Kyuji if he had wanted to. It would have been possible to make Kyuji stop at any moment. The reason that Kyuji had been able to use Death Scythe as a mere soul was because Rodcorti had allowed it and provided him with mana, after all. But because there had been the possibility of killing Vandali by allowing Kyuji to continue, Rodcorti hadn't stopped him. If Rodcorti had put any more of his power into protecting Kyuji, there would have actually been a high chance of breaking Kyuji's personality and memories, but it would have been possible for Rodcorti to cover him using his own body. Even the damage Rodcorti would have received by doing so would have been equivalent to his pinky finger being broken. It would have been far from a fatal wound. However, Rodcorti hadn't even considered Kono Kyuji to be as valuable as his own pinky finger. There hadn't been any guarantee that he would only receive that small amount of damage, and even if Kyuji's soul was broken, Rodcorti had been prepared to deal with it. There were still 95 remaining reincarnated individuals, and among all of the worlds that Rodcorti governed, there were hundreds, thousands of trillions, an uncountable number of souls, so there was no need to value Kyuji's soul so highly as long as its disappearance didn't cause any problems to the system. Now then, with the information that we have just gathered, I wish for you to think about the decision that you must make, Rodcorti said. I am sure there will be individual differences in how useful your abilities will be, but I will allow all of you to use your abilities here. I want you to use those to make your decision as well. You will be using your own mana, however, so there will be limits. With that, he left the speechless reincarnated individuals and familiar spirits behind, returning to his work and meditation. Of course, with this incident, I believe it has become difficult to choose any option other than to kill Vandali. This incident had been an unforeseen fortunate event for Rodcorti. With the Death Scythe Kono Kyuji's attack, it wasn't difficult to imagine that Vandali now saw the reincarnated individuals as his enemies. Considering Vandali's ferocious personality, he will not think of it as the Death Scythe's individual, rash action. Even if he does, he should view the others as guilty for not stopping him. The other reincarnated individuals should realize this, even without me telling them. With this, the number of people choosing not to become assassins would decrease. And there would be none betraying the other reincarnated individuals to join Vandali. And the more reincarnated individuals chose to become Vandali's enemies, the more difficult it would be for the individuals that would reincarnate from origin in the future to not become Vandali's enemies as well. Rodcorti wanted Vandali to die before then if possible, however. I'm sure they will have their answer just as Vandali's sense of vigilance loosens. Vandali was painting the highest roofs of Taylorsheim's royal castle, using the Demon King's ink sacs. This is taking longer than I thought. He was working while hovering using the wings of an insect he had equipped with insect binding technique, so the work wasn't too inefficient. It wasn't too inefficient, but the area of the roof was too large for Vandali. Van-kun, you're still recovering. I can help, too, if you teach me how, said Orbia, who had been born a Sylar and was now a water attribute ghost. She was looking at the parts that Vandali had already painted, and her voice didn't have much confidence in it. She was looking at the indescribable thing that was drawn in stimulating, retina-piercing colors. At first glance, it simply appeared to be an abstract painting. However, looking closely, it looked like a portrait depicting a person drawn in twisted lines against a landscape made entirely of primary colors. And for some reason, simply staring at it made one feel at ease. That was the kind of picture that Orbia was looking at. If I could ask someone else to do this work and still have my mental encroachment skill take effect, I would, Vandali said. Mental encroachment? What is this? Orbia asked. I was under the impression that you were so overjoyed with your first kiss that your eccentric behavior took over. Wow, that's a terrible misunderstanding. Zadiris just performed artificial respiration. Artificial respiration didn't count as kissing. Especially the type conducted by blowing air straight into the Vandali explained it had been broken. It was unlikely that the reincarnated individuals with Rodcorti could attack using clairvoyance. But even if they couldn't attack, there was no reason to allow the enemy to gather information freely. This was a mental trap to prevent that. Well, there's no sure positive proof that clairvoyance used from the divine realm looks down at us from above, though, Vandali said. It was clairvoyance from a god's perspective, and even last night, the enemy had been looking down from above, so Vandali thought that it was likely that they had to view from above. The truth was that this was quite accurate. Really? It's definitely a strange picture, but I don't dislike it, said Orbia, doubting whether this picture was effective as a trap. But this was a sign that it was successful. Yes, because I drew it in a way that those affected by demon path enticement and guidance, demon path are unaffected by it, Vandali said. The picture was drawn on the tallest roof of the royal castle, so it wouldn't be seen unless looking at it from the sky. However, there were many who could fly in Talersheim. It would be a problem if Orbia and the other ghosts, the Pteranodon zombies and the cemetery bees dropped like flies every time they saw the royal castle's roof. So, are you changing the shape of the walls surrounding the city as a countermeasure for clairvoyance as well? Orbia asked. Though Vandali had silenced the noise of the work with magic, one of his spirit form clones that had separated from his body was changing the location and previous transmutation, trying to make a large stone circle that surrounds Talersheim to apply the effects of my mental encroachment skill. Pictures would lose their effect if the paint, the Demon King's ink, faded away. But the positioning and organization of structures wouldn't lose their effects as long as the structures weren't destroyed. It was something that would need to be viewed from an even greater height than the rooftop pictures to take effect, but it was targeted at someone using clairvoyance from a divine realm. There would be no problems. But to get the most out of the effects, more work needs to be done. I suppose I'll do it when the rest get back from the Sauron Duchy, Vandali decided. Yeah, that's a good idea, said Orbia. In the coming days, the previously stone-colored royal castle of Talersheim was painted artistically, and the unremarkable fortress walls were arranged in an avant-garde style. The levels of the mental encroachment and Glum transmutation skills have increased. Baron Kyoko Ragdu was likely doing his best to put on a sullen expression. In fact, Iris could see his effort in the wrinkle between his brows, though the effort had no effect, as his cheeks were red with excitement. His nose was twitching and he appeared to be swallowing his saliva that was overflowing with anticipation. Iris Bearheart Dono. I would like you to understand my position as well. I have been placed in a very, very difficult position, Kyoko said in a voice that sounded as if he was suppressing something. He had a slightly rectangular contour and his hairline was receding slightly, but his features could be described as well ordered enough. He was looking at Iris with his eyes filled with blazing desire. Of course, Iris said, nodding. I and everyone in the Sauron Liberation Front understand your efforts and sincerity, Kyoko Dono. It can only be described as fortunate that we have gained the cooperation of such an understanding nobleman of the Amid Empire as yourself. Baron Kyoko Ragdu was not a nobleman of the Orborn Kingdom, nor was he a subordinate of the late Duke Sauron. He was one of the noblemen who had been dispatched by the Amid Empire that had invaded the Sauron Duchy and was now occupying it. The Ragdu House of Barons was a rising family. Kyoko's grandfather had been an adventurer and had been allowed by a family of barons whose bloodline had ended to marry an adopted daughter from another noble family, reviving the family of barons. In the Amid Empire, which still had strongly authoritarian views, such families were disdained and insulted as a bloodline of a lowly adventurer, with the exception of special cases like the Thunderclap Schneider. And thanks to a certain bad habit that had continued since Kyoko's grandfather's era, his entire family had been sent to the Sauron Duchy, the front line of the battle against the Orborn Kingdom, despite not being a military family, where policies for occupation were still unstable. That was Kyoko's background, but he wasn't cooperating with the resistance, the Sauron Liberation Front, because he harbored a particular spirit of rebellion against the Empire. The continuous bad habit of his family. That was the reason. I still have not received a formal knighthood, but I will certainly make the Orborn Kingdom swear that the Ragdu family of barons will carry on. I swear it on my life, Iris said. Oh no, of course, I am not doubting you and your group, Iris Dono. After all, I consider the fact that you have told me your true identity, something that you should normally keep hidden, to be a symbol of trust. However, Kyoko added before continuing, bonds of trust are cultivated through repeated exchanges with good faith. Is that not right? Of course, I am aware of this, said Iris. She covered her eyes and extended a hand towards her belt, or rather, towards the small porcelain bottle hanging from it, and placed it on the table. Normally, such a bottle would contain a potion of some sort, but the contents of the bottle were no potion. Oh, this is it? Unable to hold himself back any longer, Kyoko reached out for the small bottle like a starving beast, pulled out the cork stopper and poured the contents onto his palm. He let out a noise of wonderment as an amber-colored liquid with a phlegm-like viscosity dripped from the bottle. Oh, this color, this fragrance, I cannot have enough of this. And then he licked the fluid with his tongue. Normally, the head of a noble family would have someone test it for poison, but Kyoko possessed the poison resistance skill at a high level, so he had no hesitation. And Kyoko was displaying his intoxication at the sweetness that melted his tongue and the rich fragrance that filled his nose. He even took no notice of the saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. Wonderful. I have sampled int syrup refined from mint sap on numerous occasions, but this is truly extraordinary. The rich sweetness, the smooth texture and the full-bodied fragrance. This is truly the nectar of the heavens. It seems that you have taken a liking to it, Iris said in a slightly exasperated tone as she stared at the head of the Ragdew family of barons, which was known for its gluttony that had ruined the family in the empire. Kyoko's grandfather's motive for becoming an adventurer had been the truly simple one of "I want to eat delicious things." Even after he became an honorary baron, his appetite and passion for delicious food hadn't grown any weaker in his son or grandson, and now in Kyoko's generation, the family had repeatedly fallen into debt. Normally, a small, weak family like the Ragdew family of barons falling deep into debt would mean the end of the house. However, Kyoko did have exceptional military prowess, though not as much as his grandfather, and he possessed a capable private armed force as well as close relationships with adventurers. Kyoko might have appeared on first glance to be a stubborn bureaucratic nobleman, but because he was actually friendly, wasn't concerned with the relative social positions of others, had no interest whatsoever in power struggles and was only interested in delicious food, he was an individual who was completely free of conspiracy. Thus, the work that his private armed force did was gathering delicious monsters and produce from devil's nests and dungeons, and buying ingredients from distant places. His requests for adventurers was gathering food ingredients as well. An employer that would be difficult to offer your whole life to, but was friendly when working for him for a short period of time. That was Kyoko. Thus, in exchange for erasing his debt, his whole family and his private armed force had been moved to the Sauron Duchy. It was certainly fortunate that a baron who would discard his own nation for the sake of delicious food had been successfully tempted by the support goods provided by Vandali. Every time we have this conversation, we acquire quite a lot of information. It is a little tiring, however. My subordinates are in possession of bottles containing this syrup, Iris said. This is a symbol of our gratitude to you, Baron. Ah, Iris, don't know, the food that you provide is wonderful as usual. But where in the world do you acquire such products? Kyoko asked. This syrup is even finer in quality than what can be obtained by Treants, the superior race of Ents. Has the Sauron Liberation Front tamed a new mutation of Ent-type monster? He was no mere food maniac. It seemed that he questioned how the Sauron Liberation Front could supply this Ent syrup, the purified sap, blood, of Ison, the Skogsra. My apologies, Baron, but I do not believe our bonds are yet deep enough to share that secret, Iris said. This Baron seems like he would gladly rebel against the Empire if it meant that he could immigrate to Talersheim, but this is not something that I can decide on my own. Kyoko gave a bitter smile at Iris's reply and took out a piece of paper from his breast pocket, showing her the cryptogram written on it. I suppose it was ill-mannered of me to try to force a lady to divulge her secrets. This is the route of the army's transportation troops. As usual, please memorize it right here. And so, information regarding the Amid Empire's army was sold for the price of some syrup. That baron named Kyoko has Santiliano, doesn't he? He simply prioritizes different things, said Vandali, the sponsor of the Sauron Liberation Front, as he carefully stirred a bubbling, simmering curry. Your personal disciple, Your Majesty? I do not know him very well, so I cannot say anything, but is he really so strange, is he really so incredible? Iris asked, looking a little perplexed, as she chopped some leafed vegetables to be used in a salad. Having finished her dealings with the traitor, she had regrouped with Vandali and his companions who had brought support supplies to her base, and they were exchanging information. They roughly discussed future plans, and then Vandali had suggested that they have a somewhat late lunch. Lunch was important. A single bowl of curry would preserve the morale of Hadge and his Armatama squad. Rather than incredible, he is already within the realms of eccentricity, Vandali said. Then he may indeed get along well with the Baron, Iris remarked. That's true, he does seem to have a certain amount of interest in eating as well. Now then, I suppose it's time to serve the food. Right before the eyes of Iris and the others, Vandali's spirit form slipped out of his body and split up to produce more Vandalias, one after another. The sight of the countless Vandalias heaping the curry and rice onto wooden plates and setting the tables was quite spectacular, though it wasn't a sight that one would want to see late at night. If brownies really existed, I'm sure they would be spirits like the boss, said Miles, who was helping serve the salad. That was how skilled Vandali was. Brownie spirits, that helped with housework while families were asleep. They were generally beings that were considered to be creatures of superstition and fairy tales, but they were unlikely to resemble Vandali. Note, this is a reference to brownies, household spirits in English and Scottish work under such conditions. But Iris took it in the opposite meaning. Indeed, you would not even take a glass of milk in payment, Your Majesty, she said. It's true, you lack desires, said Debais, nodding. Yeah, why aren't you conquering the Sauron Duchy? Said Hadge. Eh? Is that how you take it? Also, Iris and the rest of you are not my subordinates, so you don't have to call me your majesty. Please call me Vandali-san, said Vandali. He would be hurt if they suddenly started calling him by his name with no honorific, so he wanted them to add san. But all of the resistance members under Iris's command denied his request, shouting, "We can't do that. Then calling me by my name is fine. Why would you say that? Are you aware of just how incredible the things you're doing are? Providing funds, supplies and military strength, and making delicious curry." The curry had been almost completely prepared in Talersheim and then preserved using preservation, so Vandali had simmered it overnight. Iris and her companions were the only ones in the Sauron Duchy who could eat this. "Thank you very much for that. But please, I want you to reconsider the value of the funds, supplies and military strength that you have provided, your majesty," said Iris. "I mean, it's not that I don't understand," Vandali said. Vandali was oversupplying the Sauron Liberation Front. He didn't have amids that were the currency currently circulating in the Sauron Duchy, but he provided funds in the form of gold, silver and jewels. He had trained Haj and the other former fake resistance members in dungeons, given them several disguised dark copper living armors and even dispatched Miles, a rank 9 abyssal vampire. He was even providing high-quality arms, even if they were made of regular iron and obsidian, as well as food like curry and other daily necessities. It was thanks to this that Kyoko had been successfully enticed. Just how much would the total value of these items be worth if converted at market value? It was far in excess for supplying to a resistance organization. If the Amid Empire's army were to learn of this, they would be certain that the Sauron Liberation Front was Vandali's private army. It was Vandali's idea of maintaining a relationship as equals after having provided so much support that was strange. If Iris were one of the late Duke Sauron's orphans or a relative of the Duke's family, then considering that the Sauron Duchy might return to the Orborn Kingdom's possession in the future, this could be considered. However, unfortunately, although the Bearheart family was well known for its military prowess, it was a mere house of knights. It was of the lowest rank of noble heritage in the Orborn Kingdom. No matter how much action the Sauron Liberation Front took, no matter how much Iris was praised, she would never become the new Duke Sauron. Because the real sons and daughters of the Sauron family who had the right to succeed it had already fled to other duchies. "Your Majesty, if you are holding any expectations of my future, it is unfortunate, but I cannot answer those expectations," Iris said. "Even if I were to raise the decapitated head of the Amid Empire's general, even if a nobleman is adopted into my family, the Bearheart House would become a family of barons at most. No, Oju, if you achieve something like that and that nobleman is a distant relative of the Sauron family or something, I think your family will become a family of earls at least, you know," said Debais. It seemed that Iris's self-value was so low that even Debais had felt the need to slip in a word. "But I think it's strange, too. Why isn't His Majesty gaining control over the Sauron Duchy with military force? We've found out that the Thunderclap Schneider that you were worried about isn't an enemy, right?" said Haj. Marie Vale, the goddess of the Scylla, had informed Vandali that the Thunderclap Schneider, the S-class adventurer of the Amid Empire, was actually an ally of Vida's races. Vandali knew this but hadn't changed his decisions. First of all, even if the Thunderclap Schneider is an ally of Vida's races, that doesn't mean he's my ally. Next is the fact that I find it difficult that I would be supported by the people. And for geostrategic reasons, it will be difficult for me to occupy the Sauron Duchy and maintain rule over it, explained Vandali, who had returned to his physical body. He was expressing that it would be dangerous to assume that the Thunderclap Schneider was not an enemy until meeting him and talking to him directly. Vandali had learned from Marie Vale that Schneider was actually a believer of Vida, and had saved many tribes of Vida's races, including Scylla living in the Amid Empire. However, if he were to decide that Vandali's actions would have negative consequences for the members of Vida's races that he had saved, it was possible that he would still become an enemy. Vandali couldn't be sure that Schneider would be an ally. Next, as for the question of whether Vandali would be supported by the people, it didn't even need to be discussed. As someone who wasn't known in the region at all and commanded large numbers of undead creatures that were considered to be taboo, Vandali was more likely to be thought of as a villain that needed to be exterminated than a hero. And Vandali intended to introduce the rich eating habits of Talersheim and the light income taxes, but that would be equivalent to picking a fight with influential people with vested interests. Last was the geostrategic reasons. If Talersheim, a third nation, were to occupy the Sauron Duchy that was sandwiched between the Orborn Kingdom and the Amid Empire, it would have a great nation adjacent both to the east and to the west. Even if Vandali teleported from dungeon to dungeon using his labyrinth construction skill and the flying Notchen and Sam were to travel through the skies, it was difficult to imagine that they would be able to transport enough personnel and goods. It won't go so well, huh? Then how about turning an entire portion of the Boundary Mountain range into golems and changing the terrain? Miles suggested as a joke. Vandali blinked and looked towards the Boundary Mountain range. Can he actually do it? Everyone thought as they looked at Vandali, holding their breaths. But Vandali quietly replied, no, that's impossible. For now. Right? As Haj and Debis exhaled, Iris and Miles shuddered, forgetting the hunger-stimulating scent of curry. For now, he says, so he'll become able to do it one day? Iris muttered. It's something that I suggested myself, but the fact that he doesn't deny it is terrifying, Miles whispered. Chapter 128. The Leaping Sphere of Flesh. After finishing eating curry with everyone, Vandali informed Iris and her companions about their reincarnated individuals with the exception of the now destroyed Death Scythe, warning them to be careful. Each person's name, the cheat-like abilities they possessed and the attributes of magic that they were proficient in, and what the reincarnated individuals had in common with each other. Explaining that cheat-like abilities were like unique skills gave the inhabitants of Lambda a good idea of what they were. And it was convenient because no matter how impossible seeming and outlandish the cheat-like abilities were, inhabitants of Lambda generally accepted it, saying, that's the kind of unique skill it is, and, it's a unique skill so there's nothing to think about. This was because in the past, there had been newly discovered unique skills that defied previously existing reason and knowledge. The reason Vandali had told them about the attributes of magic that the reincarnated individuals were proficient in was because he thought that if they were smart enough to keep their cheat-like abilities hidden rather than use them rashly like the Gungnir Kanata had done, they would likely use magic. Unlike Vandali, the reincarnated individuals apparently had the experience, knowledge and skills they possessed in origin as skills from the moment they reincarnated in Lambda. But if they were to be reincarnated in adult bodies, the thing that they would be relying on in addition to their cheat-like abilities was not martial skills, but magic. The reincarnated individuals had received military training in origin, and they had learned various combat techniques as well as how to use firearms. Kaido Kanata had also possessed the throwing and unarmed fighting technique skills. However, according to Legion, none of the bravers who had died were masters in combat techniques. They had reasonably high ability in military-style unarmed fighting and the use of knives, but most of them were simply at the level of ordinary professionals. If converted to Lambda's skill levels, they would be mostly around level 5 or 6. The only exceptions were apparently the Mage Minami Asagi and the Odin Hasamaduaki. As martial skills didn't exist in origin, combat techniques were inferior to magic in all kinds of ways. This was especially true with the existence of modern weapons such as firearms and explosives. Even so, masters of combat did exist in origin, but rather than aim to become such masters, the reincarnated individuals, having been given cheat-like abilities, had likely chosen to polish the use of their cheat-like abilities and magic. And in Lambda, firearms and explosives didn't exist. The reincarnated individuals might become able to create gunpowder, but doing that would be equivalent to hanging up a sign that read, "Hi, I'm a reincarnated individual." And according to Iris, a former believer of Alda's teachings stated that the champion Bellwood had forbidden the creation and use of a flammable black powder, though not a single person had created such a powder in 100,000 years, so this was a taboo that had been all but forgotten, recorded in only the oldest, heaviest scriptures. And although Rod Corti could grant reincarnated individuals the qualities and affinities for magic, he could not give them experience directly. If he could, there would have been no point in reincarnating them in origin first. That was why the reincarnated individuals wouldn't suddenly become new masters of elemental magic. Thus, for the reincarnated individuals to take action without being able to rely on modern weapons or use martial skills, they had no choice but to use the elemental magic that they had been proficient within. I've heard that it's not easy to change your name, too. In Lambda, one couldn't simply follow a procedure and undergo a name change. The reason was that the name displayed on a person's status was the one that was considered to be that person's real name. And the identification papers that would be needed for long-term activity in Lambda required one's real name. Even if one were to talk their way into registering with a fake name, they would be found out once the magic item for issuing guild cards was used. Among the reincarnated individuals, there were some whose names had clearly changed since they lived in Japan, but there wouldn't be anyone who would suddenly perceive themselves to have a different name without even being reborn as a baby. I see. But why won't you tell us what their faces look like? Asked Debis. Their bodies and probably their races can be different. Also, their faces will be quite different depending on their age, Vandali said. When he had gazed back at the clairvoyance Tendu Tatsuya with the abyss skill, he had seen the general appearances of the reincarnated individuals while they were just souls. He had been able to recognize them from Legion's information. It would have been impossible with only his memories from Earth. That was the case even in Origin, where humans were the only race, but there was no telling how it would be in Lambda, where there were multiple different races. It would still be alright if they were elves, who had similar physiques to humans, but if they were reincarnated as dwarves, who possessed quite different physiques, or even beast people who possessed the characteristics of beasts or draconids, it would certainly be impossible to identify them based on appearance alone. The truth was that they couldn't be reincarnated as members of Veda's races due to them being a part of a different system from Rod Cortes, however. And the thing that the reincarnated individuals will have in common is that they won't be able to use no attribute magic at first. In Origin, time attribute and no attribute magic didn't exist. Even if Rod Corti granted the reincarnated individuals an affinity for time attribute magic, there was no such thing as an affinity for no attribute magic, so they would have to train from scratch in order to become able to use it, just as Vandali had done. In other words, we must be wary of those who possess unique skills that have the effects that we have information about and are proficient in certain attributes of magic, as well as those who cannot use no attribute magic despite being able to use magic of the other attributes. Iris concluded. That's right, said Vandali. If the reincarnated individuals were to be reborn in adult bodies, they would have unknown personal histories. Despite that, they would possess skills at around level 5. Unless they were extremely clever in their behavior, they would certainly stand out. And the Sauron duchy in which Iris and her companions were based was under the Amid Empire's occupation. Entering and exiting the duchy on the Orborn Kingdom side was difficult, and only soldiers and merchants with passes were allowed in and out on the Amid Empire side. Iris and her companions, who had the wide support of the people and even had informants inside the Empire's army, would be able to notice the presence of any reincarnated individuals. However, the reincarnated individuals should also notice that it is difficult to enter this region. I am unsure if we will be of any use, Iris murmured. No, if you do notice them, you shouldn't try to capture them, said Vandali. Secretly sending word to me will be enough. I'll be leaving glimpses that you can use to contact me. No way, Your Majesty. We won't lose to them. No matter what unique skills they have, a bunch of guys who can't use martial skills will be a pushover. Isn't that right, everyone? Said Hajj. He and the others raised their fists, which were still holding their spoons, into the air to show their fighting spirit. No, that's not really the case, Vandali said, trying to calm them down. Calm down. Listen, those guys are really crazy, they're not opponents that you can match. Said Miles, his loud voice drowning out Vandali's. Last night, Boss fought one of those reincarnated individuals and nearly died. You people just need to report information to him. Do you understand? What? His Majesty almost died? Hajj exclaimed. He and his companions opened their eyes wide in astonishment. No way, His Majesty, who still had room to breathe even while fighting the pure-breed vampire government Q. Indeed, as we are now, we would be able to do nothing but buy time, Iris murmured in frustration. No, well, I did almost die, but Vandali felt like he was tricking them. It was true that his heartbeat and breathing had been stopped, and Zadiris and the others had been in a little danger as well. It's fine, isn't it? They're listening now. Lying is a means, too, Miles whispered with a wink so powerful that it was almost audible. I suppose you're right. It's true that the reincarnated individuals are really formidable enemies, too. Well then, I'll be applying clairvoyance countermeasures to this base and then going back, Vandali said. After that, Vandali carved strange patterns on the roof of the base and set up mysterious stone circles in its surroundings. Having returned to Taylorsheim, Vandali headed for the usual job-changing room. Normally, participating in battles himself while increasing his level helped him progress with the acquisition of skills, but he'd been too busy this time, so he had been leaving a clone of himself nearby where Borkus was defeating Mikhail to leech experience points, and his zombie maker jobs level had reached 100. Setting up clairvoyance countermeasures seems like it will take quite a lot of time, after all. I suppose it'll be stone circles in the marshlands of the Lizardman and Scylla. He had to spend time on countermeasures against the reincarnated individuals, but the reincarnated individuals were a new, powerful threat, so Vandali needed to become stronger to face them. It was all very troublesome. Jobs that can be selected: Corpse Demon Commander Disease Demon Spirit Warrior Whip Tongue Calamity Vengeful Berserker Dead Spirit Mage Duck Healer Labyrinth Creator Ordman King User Magic Cannon Golem Creator Duck King Mage Divine Enemy Duck Guider. When Vandali touched the crystal ball, the list of jobs displayed in his consciousness had even more dangerous sounding jobs. Assuming Dark Guider is similar to Demon Guider, can one person have multiple Guider jobs? But divine enemy, if someone found out I had this job, they'd immediately treat me as an evil being. Though Vandali had recently built new relationships with gods, it was undoubtedly because of Rodkorti or perhaps Alder, the god of law and fate, that this job had appeared. It could just be because he had destroyed Geberman, however. No, it hadn't appeared when he changed jobs to Zombie Maker after that, so it was because of Rodkorti after all. Getting a hold of himself, Vandali chose the job that he would change to. I choose Golem Creator. Considering the bonuses to his attribute values, the choice would have been Dark Guider, a Guider-type job like Demon Guider. However, Vandali chose the Golem Creator job that seemed like it would be related to alchemy. He had created Life Gold and Spirit Silver and successfully created 2 of alchemy's 3 holy grails. He thought that if he could increase his alchemy skill even further from this point, he could get closer to achieving Dasa's resurrection. That, and the Golem Transmutation skill was certainly helpful. The levels of the Golem Transmutation and alchemy skills have increased. The Golem Transmutation skill has awakened to the Golem Creation skill. The Carpentry, Engineering and Blacksmithing skills are fused with the Golem Creation skill. Name, Vandali Race, Damper, Dark Elf Age, 9 years old. Title: Ghoul King, Eclipse King, Second Coming of the Demon King, Guardian of the Cultivation Villages, Holy Son of Veda, Monstrosity, Scale King, Tentacle King. Job, Golem Creator level, 0. Job history, Death Attribute Mage, Golem Transmuter, Undead Tamer, Soul Breaker, Venom Fist User, Insect User, Tree Caster, Demon Guider, Archenemy, Zombie Maker. Attributes: Vitality, 2241, Mana, 1,082,220,588, plus 324,666,176, Strength, 996, Agility, 748, Stamina, 1,053, Intelligence, 2,225. Passive skills: Superhuman Strength, level 5, Rapid Healing, level 10, level up. Death Attribute Magic, level 10, Status Effect Resistance, level 8, Magic Resistance, level 6, Dark Vision, Demon Path Enticement, level 2, Chant Revocation, level 6, Guidance, Demon Path, level 4, Automatic Mana Recovery, level 6, Strengthened Subordinates, level 7, Venom Secretion, Claws, Fangs, Tongue, level 5, Enhanced Agility, level 3, Body Expansion, Tongue, level 5, Strengthened Attack Power while unarmed, large, Enhanced Physical Ability, Hair, Claws, Tongue, Fangs, level 4, Thread Refining, level 3, Mana Enlargement, level 3, Active Skills, Bloodwork, level 3, Surpass Limits, level 8, level up. Golem Creation, level 1, Awaked from Golem Transmutation. No Attribute Magic, level 8, Mana Control, level 7, Spirit Form, level 8, Carpentry, level 6 combined with Golem Creation. Engineering, level 4 combined with Golem Creation. Cooking, level 5, Alchemy, level 7, level up. Unarmed Fighting Technique, level 6, Soul Break, level 10, level up. Multicast, level 6, Long Distance Control, level 7, Surgery, level 6, level up. Parallel Thought Processing, level 6, Materialization, level 4, Coordination, level 4, High-Speed Thought Processing, level 5, Commanding, level 4, Plant Binding Technique, level 5, Thread Reeling, level 5, Throwing, level 5, Scream, level 4, Dead Spirit Magic, level 5, Insect Binding Technique, level 5, Blacksmithing, level 1 combined with Golem Creation. Artillery Technique, level 4, Shield Technique, level 1, new. Armor Technique, level 1, new. Unique Skills, Godslayer, level 8, level up. Grotesque Mind, level 7, level up. Mental Encroachment, level 6, level up. Labyrinth Construction, level 6. Demon King Fusion, level 4. Abyss, level 4, level up. Hostility Demon King Fragments. Bloodhorns Suckers Ink Sacs Carapace Curses Experience gained in previous life not carried over, cannot learn existing jobs, unable to gain experience independently. The announcer's voice echoed inside Vandali's head. His creation type skills had suddenly fused with the Golem Creation skill, which seemed to be a superior version of the Golem Transmutation skill. Vandali was slightly bewildered. From previous experience, he knew that the skills that existed prior to skill fusion didn't disappear when they fused. Thus, he was trying to test the skill out right away on the death iron of a throwing kunai that he was holding, but the sensation was somewhat strange. I feel some discomfort, but there's no response from danger sense. Death, is it a problem with my mana? When he tried to turn the kunai into a golem to change its shape, he could intuitively think of two different ways to do it. One was the usual method. The other was a method that would consume an amount of mana that was an order of magnitude higher than the usual method. What is this sensation that feels like a million-yen corner has been built into a 100-yen shop? Now that Vandali thought about it, was it best to create a one-lunar shop in Taylorsheim sometime? He wondered how profitable the 100-yen shops of Earth had been. Taylorsheim had many nocturnal inhabitants, so the number of 24-hour retail stores was increasing. However, with his thoughts going in strange directions, he turned the Death Iron Kunai into a golem with the normal method first. The sensation and accuracy of the shape alteration was the same as always. Next, the large mana consumption method. Vandali's mana decreased by an enormous amount. Not by 1 million, but by 100 million. And then a kunai appeared in Vandali's palm and fell onto his foot with a heavy noise. Fortunately, it was made of liquid metal so it didn't pierce his foot, but even though it was liquid, it was just as heavy as iron, so it was quite painful. With watering eyes, Vandali looked at the kunai-shaped Death Iron that had appeared, which was now lying by his feet, and the Death Iron kunai whose shape he had altered by turning into a golem. This is a result that seems like it would make Luciliano happy if he saw it. Just as its title suggested, it seemed that the golem creation skill could create matter and use it as a golem. Up until now, Vandali had been unable to create golems with golem transmutation without using pre-existing matter as materials. Even when he built structures, stone and lumber had been necessary materials. However, the superior skill, golem creation, could create matter from nothing. It seemed that it used a large amount of mana in return. Since Vandali needed over 100 million mana to create a single throwing kunai's worth of Death Iron, how much would he need to create the usual material transporting golems or fighting golems? However, if Vandali could master the use of this skill, he would really be able to build a fortress city in a barren wasteland. Well, I already have Notchen, so I get the feeling that I won't need to be able to do that. The Bone Fort Notchen, who was a combination of a large number of bones joined together, was a mobile fortress that could fly through the sky. It was currently at the southern end of the marshlands, acting as a base for the Dark Knight Knights Order led by Isla. For now, I'll inspect how much mana is consumed based on the properties and amount of matter I use this on, but before that, I'll try to see if I can fix the resurrection device, Vandali said to himself as he left the job-changing room. The sub-dragon monsters that inhabited the class dungeon, Balkus's sub-dragon savannah that were now referred to as dinosaurs, fled in fear of the sphere of flesh. Ha 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 ha. This sphere of flesh was not the one found on the paws of animals such as dogs or cats. It was an enormous, spherical lump of flesh. Note, the word referring to the pads on the paws of dogs and cats is flesh sphere in Japanese, so there's a kind of pun here. It was closing in on the dinosaurs and mowing down the fern trees in its path. Even though the dinosaurs were dungeon-born monsters that were more ferocious than regular monsters, they couldn't help but to instinctively flee. And numerous arms and legs were protruding from the side of the sphere's surface, kicking against the ground to propel itself forward. Fa ha 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 ha. It was even letting out the loud laughter of a woman from somewhere. Even a Tyrannosaurus Rex was fleeing. However, Tyrannosaurus Rex monsters were rank 4 monsters. They would be classified as Sub-Dragon Savannah, a class dungeon. That Tyrannosaurus Rex was running towards a roaring rank 5 huge Triceratops. Already ready for combat, it charged forward, sending the carnivorous Tyrannosaurus Rex flying as it attacked the lump of flesh. Phew ha 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 ha. My advance does not stop. Spiral attack, shouted a woman's voice with extremely strange pronunciation. However, at that moment, the arms protruding from the lump of flesh began moving quickly, rapidly accelerating the lump of flesh's speed of rotation. It collided head-on with the charging huge Triceratops that was over 10 meters in length, and it was the dinosaur that was sent flying. The huge Triceratops, whose horns and cervical vertebrae had been crushed from the impact, as well as several Tyrannosaurus Rexes that hadn't managed to avoid a collision, were scattered around the surroundings. If one ignored the size of the objects, this scene resembled a number of animals being sent flying by a car in a traffic accident. Ha 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 ha. Sig. Note, Sig is the German word for victory. Having gotten the better of the collision, the lump of flesh stopped rolling and the upper body half of a woman suddenly popped out from its top surface. Its surface was the same color as the rest of the lump of flesh, and it didn't have eyes or a nose, but from its outline and form, it was clearly the upper body half of a tall woman. The half-woman put her hands on her hips and held her chest out in triumph. But the upper half of a person with a neutral form that was difficult to distinguish as male or female called out to her from the side. Valkyrie, cheat. Wah. Inma, why? Because Sig isn't understood in Lambda. No way. We gained experience points and our level went up, so it's fine, right? Okay. No. Because it's a game where you have to use only Lambda words. Berserk, hold Valkyrie down. A flesh-colored golem appeared and squashed Valkyrie back into the sphere of flesh. No. Valkyrie cried. I'm weak. Hard work is, Valkyrie, it was in our previous lives that you were the weakest among us after Pluto. In this world, we all share the same attribute values. While the lump of flesh legion was increasing its level, gaining skills and changing jobs, it had become able to separate its thoughts to some extent. Now, Valkyrie, Enma and the rest of the 8th guidance, as well as the Gazer Menuma Hitumi, were able to speak separately. However, unlike in cases where a body was shared or cases of split personalities, their memories were completely shared. To make a comparison, it was like there were terminals called Enma and Valkyrie connected to the server known as Legion. That was the state that Legion was in. In this state, Legion was playing a game where only the use of Lambda's language was allowed as it leveled, in order to learn Lambda's language, which was based on Japanese. To be more precise, Earth's Japanese rather than Earth's. Geez, that hurts. Inma suddenly looked behind him to see that 3 Tyrannosaurus Rexes seemed to have thought that this was an opening and taken the opportunity to start biting and shredding Legion's flesh. 3 Tyrannosaurus Rexes, shredding and chewing the meat with their sharp fangs and powerful jaws. 10 humans worth of flesh had already been eaten. However, Enma didn't feel a great deal of pain nor much of a sense of danger. Status I see, so this is the phenomenon that occurs due to the existence of vitality, he said as he calmly cast the no attribute spell status and checked his own condition. Legion had lost around 1 million of its 10 million vitality. In other words, Legion had taken 1 million points of damage. Despite that, Enma and the rest of Legion didn't feel much pain because when considering the whole, this damage was small. The creatures of Earth or origin wouldn't merely feel some pain if Tyrannosaurus Rexes were to bite into them and shred a mouthful of flesh. Humans and other large mammals would die. Whales and elephants could survive depending on where they were bitten, but they wouldn't be able to remain calm, they would let out screams of pain. However, in Lambda, where vitality, the concept of hit points from video games, existed, the size of wounds was determined by the damage amount in relation to the maximum hit point total. With a large amount of maximum hit points, even the bites of Tyrannosaurus Rexes are just like scratches, Inma murmured. Still, we're being eaten too much, said Valkyrie as she and Izanami's upper bodies emerged next to him. We'll heal soon though, said Izanami. The two of them had vague forms, and Izanami in particular was unrecognizable at first glance as there were no tumors on her body. If you think that way, then attack back. I'm still not good at fighting, Inma told them. All right, Irshkigel whispered. In the next moment, one of the Tyrannosaurus Rexes that had been one-sidedly biting into Legion died as invisible fangs pierced the flesh of its head, sending blood spraying out. Enraged by the sudden counterattack, the other 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes tried to sink their fangs into Legion once more. However, one of the fragments of flesh remaining between one of the Tyrannosaurus Rex's teeth exploded, sending its head flying away. The last Tyrannosaurus Rex was ended by a martial skill from the short sword in one of Legion's hands, Quick Draw, which slashed through the arteries in its throat. New flesh rose in the wounds where Legion's flesh had been gouged out, returning to normal in no time. Well then, shall we eat to make up for our exercise? You mustn't eat the skin, magic stones or the bones, Jack. I know, Hitumi-chan. The arms and legs extended from Legion's sides, squirming and eating the meat of the dead huge Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus Rexes as if assimilating it into itself. Porvina and the others, who were taking a break, ate their obentos as they watched this spectacle from a distance. Hey, what does Sig mean? Porvina asked. It means victory, Porvina, said a lump of flesh with the form of a girl, the personality of Pluto, which had separated itself from Legion. By the way, what kind of state are you in when you're using long-range control? Unlike the undead Vandali, we can't share our memories when we're separate. Maybe it's because unlike Van, who is one person who splits himself, you were originally different people. I think so. For us, it's more like separation than long-distance control. Eat, said Ison. Thank you, Ison-san, said Pluto. All of the nearby dinosaurs are all going to Legion, so it's really easy for me, said Braga. Could it be that you guys are delicious? He asked Pluto. Please don't eat us, Braga-san. Legion had formed a party to level up with Porvina, Rapisage, Yamata, Privil, Ison and Braga, who had followed them to act as a scout. Separation Rapisage groaned. Separation Yamata sang. The two of them seemed to be imitating Pluto and trying their long-range control skills. They had detached their assorted parts from themselves and were moving them around. Rapisage had already possessed the long-range control skill, but Yamata's 9 beautiful women's upper body halves were simply crawling around on the ground, creating quite the ghastly sight. Incidentally, Eleonora had been with them until yesterday to make sure that Legion, Porvina and the others could pass through Baucus's sub-dragon savannah, but seemingly having decided that they would have no trouble with the upper and middle floors, she was leveling in the B-class dungeon, the Scale King's Nest, starting from today. It seemed that she had been dissatisfied with the experience points that she could earn from a class dungeon as a rank 9 vampire viscount. It might have been fine for her to fight Mikhail, the rank 10 training dummy, but since she couldn't defeat him with her current fighting abilities, even though she would be able to polish her skills and improve her ability greatly, she wouldn't gain any experience points whatsoever. The zombie heroes Zandia and Gina were acting separately as well. This morning, thanks to the surgery skill of Isis who was a part of Legion, Zandia and Gina had been restored to a state that was extremely close to how they had been while alive. Now, they were training with Baucus in the B-class dungeon, Barragent's 4-Life Mountain, in order to become accustomed to their undead bodies. It seemed that they intended to once more battle their fated enemies once they were sufficiently accustomed to their bodies. Goki Suzuma. Now then, let's get going. By the way, can you pass through the stairs after becoming that big? Won't you get stuck? Porvina asked Pluto as she started picking up Yamata's upper body halves that were lying on the ground. Big? Repeated one of Yamata's upper body halves. Stuck? Said another. Porvina couldn't be blamed for wondering this. Legion's main body had grown to be more than 10 meters in diameter. They've changed their size using size alteration, so it's fine, said Pluto. Oh. Size alteration is so nice. I want to learn it too. If I did, I could go and play at Braga and everyone else's house, said Porvina, who was around 2.5 meters tall. It seemed that she was jealous of the ability to change size at will. However, size alteration was a skill that only monsters could normally acquire. Aren't there any magic items or drugs that have the effect of making you smaller? Pluto asked. I don't know, said Porvina. I don't know either, said Privil. I've heard of things that make you bigger in folk tales, though. I'll ask my mother when we get back. And so, the Inhuman Girls plus extra party members continued their leveling for a week. Name, Legion. Age, 0. Title, none. Rank, 6. Race, Legion. Level, 87. Job, Enormous Meat Sphere Warrior. Job level, 0. Job history, Apprentice Mage, Mage, Apprentice Warrior, Warrior, Meat Sphere Warrior. Passive skills, Mental Corruption, Level 7. Composite Soul, Magic Resistance, Level 3, Level Up. Special 5 Senses, Physical Attack Resistance, Level 5, Level Up. Form Alteration, Level 3, Level Up. Super Speed Regeneration, Level 2, Level Up. Superhuman Strength, Level 3, New. Mana Enlargement, Level 1, New. Enhanced Vitality, Level 6, New. Strengthened Attribute Values, Consumable Meat, Level 3, New. Active Skills, Limited Death Attribute Magic, Level 10. Size Alteration, Level 5, Level Up. Commanding, Level 3. Surgery, Level 5. Unarmed Fighting Technique, Level 6, Level Up. Short Sword Technique, Level 3, Level Up. Fusion, Level 2, Level Up. Charge, Level 5, New. Chant Revocation, Level 1, New. Parallel Thought Processing, Level 5, New. Long Distance Control, Level 3, New. No Attribute Magic, Level 1, New. Mana Control, Level 2, New. Surpass Limits, Level 1, New. High Speed Travel, Level 1, New. Strength and Regeneration, Consumable Meat, Level 3, New. Unique Skills, Rod Cortes Divine Protection lost due to Moving Circle of Transmigration Systems. New Good Fortune of Reincarnation lost due to Moving Circle of Transmigration Systems. God of Origins Divine Protection, Zeruan's Divine Protection, Ricolant's Divine Protection Gazer, Level 5. Job Explanation, Zombie Maker, a job for those who create zombies from corpses. It is a job with the effect of drastically reducing the time and mana required to create undead, including zombies, but especially zombies. The bonuses provided to attribute values is slight, but the job makes the creation of large quantities of zombies possible. But Vandali has always been capable of creating zombies without taking any time, and he has always possessed a vast amount of mana. Thus, by changing jobs to Zombie Maker and reducing the time and mana it takes to create zombies, he has acquired the unexpected side effect of unconsciously turning corpses in the area surrounding him into undead. Job explanation: Meat Sphere Warrior. A job that can only be acquired by a member of an intelligent race whose body, which must be over 1,000 kilograms in mass, is comprised entirely of meat. Naturally, Legion is the first to acquire this job in Lambda. This job greatly increases strength, stamina and vitality, and grants large bonuses to the unarmed fighting technique, charge, rapid healing. Legion possesses the superior skill to this, size alteration and cooking skills. Also, this job makes the owner's meat more delicious, and grants the ability to make delicious meat. If the level of the Meat Sphere Warrior job reaches 100 and the owner's body of meat surpasses 10,000 kilograms in mass, it becomes possible to change to the superior job, Enormous Meat Sphere Warrior. Note that the above recorded status is after Legion has finished leveling. Chapter 129, The Heroes Comforting the King with Their Bodies. The consciousnesses of the two had been in a foggy state for 200 years. They were in a state that was far worse than being drunk on alcohol. When drunk, one would think foolish thoughts and express emotions more intensely than usual, but these two had not even been capable of these things. During those 200 years, they had been unable to recall their memories of their past, nor could they move their bodies freely. Zandia and Gina had felt a sensation that was as if there was a transparent object separating themselves from their memories and bodies. Their sense of time had been vague, so it was only later that they learned that around 200 years had passed. However, the end of that vague sensation came to an abrupt end when they met a damp boy with a crimson and a bluish-purple eye in a dimly lit place. Behind him were a group of extremely familiar people. They felt a strong sense of disgust at the commands that were issued to them by an old man's voice, which they had never had any doubts about before. Once they and the other zombies were captured and taken away to a place where they received surgery, they became at ease. They felt surprised at how much they had been suffering and how normal suffering had become to them, and they regained their memories and their ability to think to some extent. They were surprised when they became aware that they had died and become undead. They were dumbfounded when they learned that their comrade Borkus had become a zombie, and that Princess Olivia, who was supposed to have escaped to the Hartner Duchy, had turned into a ghost. And then they learned that the destroyed Taylorsheim had been restored, and it was expanding beyond its scale of 200 years ago. Your fury was terrible back then. You were howling terrifying things, like how you wanted to go to the Hartner Duchy right now to castrate all of the Hartner family's men and put an end to their lineage. And when the kid tried to stop you, you just picked him up and tried to take him with you, said Borkus. That's right, Zandia. You're the second princess, so you have to have some self-control. No, Gina, nay, I just shouted that I wanted to kill them all. The one who shouted that they'd castrate the Hartner family's men and then tried to carry His Majesty Khan away in an iron claw grip was you. That other time was pretty incredible, said Saria. It was great that Luciliano-san got stepped on when he was trying to peek at your surgeries. Nobody got angry at the peeking incident, either, said Rita. He traded a rib for that, and it was Gina who started running around wearing only a single surgery gown, said Zadyrus. In a way, being seen would have served her right. The living maid armors Saria and Rita, as well as Zadyrus, who for some reason was accompanying them just because her name was similar to Zandia's, were roasting some tear-soaked meat as they nodded to themselves, recalling the events that had occurred several months ago. Gina had stepped on Luciliano and tripped over, and this had given Vandali the opportunity to grab her and calm her down. Given this achievement and the fact that he had given up a rib for this, Luciliano had been forgiven for attempting to peek. I'm already unemployed, so it's fine, said Gina. The church is being well looked after by New Arzakan, and everyone except that bearded person apologized, and even His Majesty Khan forgave me, so it's fine, right? He said, when I first learned the truth, I instinctively felt a desire to start killing everyone without discrimination, so I know how you feel. You're right about the latter, but unemployed, you say New Arzakan is clinging to you and begging you to return to the church every time he sees you, said Zandia. It just means that my tendency to do things at my own pace hasn't become any better after I died. Well, he'll give up soon. After that, Zandia and Gina, who had become even weaker after the contraptions that the pure-breed vampire government had added to their bodies were removed, began leveling right away in order to regain the strength that they had possessed while alive. However, they struggled more than they had expected. Gina had been an A-class adventurer, while Zandia had been B-class. They had defeated earth dragons and stone dragons without any problems before, but perhaps because their bodies had been tampered with by Gaberman, unlike Balkus who had become an undead on his own, they couldn't move their bodies as they wanted, and they couldn't control magic well, either. Even if they could apply an iron claw on a Vandali who was standing still in a daze, it was difficult to land their weapons and spells on moving monsters. Because of this, at first, they had needed to fire their spells haphazardly and apply numerous full swings of their halberds to defeat goblins. Though they were feeling depressed, saying that even novices holding weapons for the first time wouldn't struggle this much, they had steadily learned how to move their new bodies by facing monsters and Mikhail, regaining the strength they had possessed while alive. It was this morning that things had changed for the better. Legion had acquired the parallel thought processing skill, and one of its personalities, Isis, had carried out surgery that allowed Gina and Zandia to regain their strength. Someone who has already modified undead before trying to modify the bodies of a race that they've never seen before is quite terrifying, though, said Gina. Isis's surgery is half-death attribute magic, so please don't worry about it. And I don't have any pride when it comes to that, said Vandali, who didn't consider himself to be a doctor even if he did conduct surgery. Come now, he said to the two of them, beckoning them towards Legion, whom they were staring at in surprise. Well then, I won't decline, said Isis. The ones who want to decline are us. Don't say that. I have a lot of hands with this body, so I have the feeling that I can do more incredible surgeries than I did when I was alive. Ah, I've just thought of something urgent I need to do, so see you later, Gina. It's unfair for you to just fly away with the upper half of your body. And it's my first time messing around with undead that aren't humans. I really want to play around so badly that I can't help myself, Isis said. Zandia gave a shriek of terror. You just said some really scary words, like mess around and play around, didn't you? I forgot that this flying mechanism can't go too far away from my lower body. Don't mess around with my cross-section. Gina shouted. Well then, me and my apprentice who won't learn his lesson will be waiting outside, said Vandali. Luciliana gave a shriek. They are already conscious, so let me watch, master. As a result of the surgery that seemed like fleshy tentacle play, Gina and Zandia succeeded in rapidly regaining their strength, though a few short steps of what it had been while they were alive. In origin, any corpse could become capable of moving like it did while it was alive, but I suppose because this world is different, it's not just the laws of physics, but the properties of magic that are different as well, said Isis. It seemed that the surgery that could be conducted by Isis could only restore full strength for undead who were below Legion in rank. Vandali had never consciously thought about it before, but it was possible that such things were different for different worlds. Or perhaps because he had been unable to bring his experiences from origin to Lambda due to Rod Corty's curse, he had relearned everything from scratch on his own to adapt to this world. The Gungnuk Kanata had also reincarnated from another world and used magic, but he had never voiced any particular flaws in his magic before encountering Vandali or even afterwards. It could simply have been that he hadn't had enough time to notice the flaws during his short third life, or perhaps Rod Corty had made adjustments to all of the reincarnated individuals except for Vandali so that no flaws with their magic would occur. It was likely the latter. Leaving that aside, thanks to the tentacle play that messed around with their organs and muscle structure, and the hard work that they had put in, Gina and Zandia, who had originally been rank 6, had regained their strength to rank 8. And now, they were leveling in Barajan's 4-life mountain. It really is tough for the two of us to fight rank 9 monsters without Balkus. By the way, this dungeon card is really convenient. Even the dungeons have been relocated to be closer to the city. His Majesty Kun is amazing, isn't he? Said Zandia, who appeared to be in her mid-teenage years or even younger despite actually being in her late teenage years, as she held up a flame in the left hand that had been restored by Vandali. Her brown skin looked as if blood had returned to it. She looked like a normal beautiful girl though she was 2 meters tall because she was a titan. Right. Botchan is amazing, said Rita. Yeah, his Mano is amazing. He's the hero of Talersheim, he saved us, He saved Nasan and he saved everyone who was turned into slaves by the Hartner family. I don't know how we're supposed to return the favor, said Zandia. That was what Vandali was to Zandia. She knew she was no longer a princess but a zombie, and Vandali was her master, so she had wondered if she should treat him as such. But Vandali had told her, even Borkus calls me kid, so you can just call me by my name. Vandali had restored the destroyed nation while she remained in captivity, and he had only received the gratitude she had been able to give as what was left of the royal family. So, will it be marriage, then? Asked Saria. That is a little early, is it not? Does engagement not come first? Said Zadyrus. Wow, congratulations. Said Rita. Yeah, that's what surprised me most. Or rather, what still surprises me the most, Zandia said, glaring at the happy-looking Rita and the others through half-closed eyes. The thing that surprised her most was the fact that she had become a marriage candidate for Vandali. I mean, I am a part of the royal family, the second princess. Talks of marriage into the Hartner family started when trade with the Hartner duchy first began. I've never really had anyone I liked while I was alive, and I thought that my marriage was something that was going to be decided by my parents. She didn't have any dissatisfactions with the fact that Vandali would marry not only her, but Livia in the future, as well as numerous other wives, though this hadn't been formally decided yet. Taylorsheim had always had people with wild ideas about the relationships between men and women, and considering the state of the new Taylorsheim, it was actually necessary for every race to take multiple wives. Connections of blood and marriage had the effects of strengthening bonds between the inhabitants of nations, particularly between those who lived in tribes. As a member of the royal family of Taylorsheim, which had been isolated for 100,000 years with an absence of the concept of democracy, Zandia thought this way. Bonds and religious faith were needed to gather the people into one. And she had no complaints with Vandali himself. The fact that he was small couldn't be helped since he was a member of another race, and he would be growing a little larger in the future. She knew that he had even taken care of the nails of her left hand, treating it with care. He had rescued her from an evil vampire, if one ignored the fact that he had done so after death. The romance was perfect. That was why she didn't really have any dissatisfaction with the fact that she had somehow become a marriage candidate for him. She didn't, but the problem is, I'm a zombie. Why? Why would he marry a zombie? Zandia exclaimed. What problem is there with being a zombie? We're living armors as well, said Saria. We'd have a big problem with succession. What Zandia viewed as a problem was that because she was a zombie, she couldn't see any point in a marriage. Well, I understand what you want to say. You mean that there is no continuation of the lineage, do you not? Said Zadyrus. That's right. Undead can't have children, unlike actual members of Veda's races like vampires and ghouls. I understand political marriages can have various purposes other than having children, but His Majesty Khan is the king of Taylorsheim, right? He has statues of himself standing all over the city, right? There isn't anything for him to gain by marrying me, right? Wanting to sigh but realizing that there wasn't any air left in her lungs, Zandia inhaled so that she could let it out again in a sigh. I understand a marriage with Nasan. She can do housework, she has a tolerant mind, she seems to expose more of her body than she did when she was alive, she burns, and with her curves, especially her chest, she was said to be one of Taylorsheim's two leaders along with Ge Nene. Compared to that, I have confidence in my magic, but that's all. My body is skinny, and, saying any more about that would be bad for Zadyrus-san, Rita pointed out. Sorry, don't take it personally. Zandia said hastily. Having that said to me hurts more, Rita. I will be confiscating this, Zadyrus said. My serving of meat. Ignoring your curves, isn't it fine? Whether you marry him or not, said Geena, who had finished eating her meat at her own pace, speaking to Zandia in a light-hearted tone. Geena, nay, don't say it so simply. I mean, it's just a matter of whether you'd be a bride or a mistress, right? No. You're wrong, Geena, nay. Am I? I intend to give him my body and my heart, though. It seemed that His Majesty Khan liked my body, too, said Geena, who had been praised as the saint of healing, as she pointed at her plentiful chest, no, at her powerful biceps brachii muscle and her actually ripped at some point between her upper and lower body halves, abdominal muscles. Geena was in her 200s, marriageable age for a Titan woman, but her clothes and armor were kept to a minimum other than her enormous shield. For the Titans, their own bodies were beautiful things that they were proud of, and especially for Jaina, who is a scent of Vida, the goddess of life and love, showing her vitality was a part of the Titan race's faith. Being an undead zombie didn't change anything about that. Children and that sort of stuff is fine, isn't it? It seems that His Majesty Kun has a long lifespan, so they're probably not that necessary, Jaina said. That's true, but said Zandia. I actually want him to marry me. It comes with delicious food, Saria-chan, Rita-chan and Zadirus-chan. Wow, you go too far as usual, Jaina nay. Jaina, a tall woman even for a Titan with a height of 2.7 meters, had a preference for those smaller than her. Oh my, how embarrassing, said Saria. I have grandchildren, do not refer to me using chan. Despite my appearance, I am soon to be 300 years old, said Zadirus. If you include the time I was alive, I'm already over 400, said Jaina. They shared this foolish conversation, occasionally looking towards Borkus, who was completely still and silent as if he were an ornament. Borkus had been brooding frequently ever since they entered the dungeon. He behaved normally during battle, but he was always like this while the party was resting. What do you think? I was sure that you'd tell Zandia to let the kid take you, but it feels unpleasant to have you sitting there quietly like an ornament, Jaina said to him. Unpleasant, you say? Well, it really is unpleasant, said Zandia. That's a word that explains what kind of person Borkus is to you too, said Rita. For Jaina, Borkus was a reliable companion and, at the same time, a mischievous father. To Zandia, he was a father-like figure and a man who was something of a friend to her. And to Borkus, Jaina was someone he considered to be his innocent younger sister and Zandia was something like another daughter, someone he still needed to look after. As such, they were unreserved when interacting with each other. You don't need to call me unpleasant, Borkus groaned. I'm feeling unpleasant too, from using my head so much. However, Jaina, Zandia and the rest of the women were merciless. Worrying about things isn't called using your head, Jaina said. That's right, it's easy for our sense of time to become dull as undead, so if you think for a long time, there won't be any end to it, said Zandia. If you have no appetite, please give us your meat, said Rita. Well, how about saying what is on your mind? Though I can imagine who you want to consult regarding what, said Zadirus. It seemed that everyone had seen through Borkus's troubles. Perhaps realizing that his thoughts showed on his face even though half of it was a skull, he pressed a hand against his forehead on the bony side. However, confiding in and asking for help now was like betraying Zandia and Jaina, and betraying the old Talersheim. Nobody could blame him for acting unlike himself and being troubled. Then I'll say it, but I want to release that bastard Mikhail from his role as a training dummy. It's hard to say that he should be acquitted and made a free man, but I was wondering if he could at least be able to open his mouth and be an instructor of the training grounds. So, I was thinking of asking the kid. The thing that Borkus was troubled over was the betterment of the treatment of Mikhail, the divine spear of ice, former hero of the Mage Shield Nation, responsible for the destruction of the old Talersheim. Currently, Mikhail had multiple safety devices made from the Demon King's fragments as well as explosive devices buried in his body. He was being used as a training dummy with no freedom over his movement or speech. The only thing he could move of his own will were his eyes. It was far too tragic a fate for a hero, but to the citizens of the old Talersheim, he was the detested enemy who had destroyed their nation. And to Borkus, Mikhail was his own killer. But, well, he's an undead now, and he can't return to his homeland. He probably doesn't have any faith for Elder left now, and he regrets what he did while he was alive. It's not like I feel sorry for him, but I was wondering if he could at least be like a criminal slave or something, Borkus said in disconnected words, gazing at Zandia and Jaina with a dull look in his already lightless, dull undead eyes. Mikhail was the one who had killed Zandia and Jaina as well. After Borkus was killed, Jaina had been stabbed to death, and Zandia's left hand had been sliced off before she fell in the same way. After that, Mikhail and his companions had challenged the Orichalcum dragon in order to destroy the goddess Vida's relic, where his companions were wiped out. After losing his precious spear, Ice Age, he barely escaped alive, only to run into the vampires who were gathering the three corpses. Although he managed to repel the vampires, his wounds were deep, and he had died because he was not treated in time. After that, his corpse had been stolen and added to the pure-breed vampire government's collection of undead heroes. Well, isn't it fine? Said Jaina. I suppose I'm okay with it as well, said Zandia. I would be reluctant to have him acquitted, but I don't really care if he's going to be a criminal slave. The two of them approved of Borkus's idea. "Are you serious? We're talking about that Mikhail, you know?" Borkus shouted. "This is surprising," said Rita. "You made a sport of him so violently in the training grounds, so I thought your guts were still boiling with anger at him." "My guts aren't boiling, they're cold." "You want to see them?" said Giena. "I wouldn't go that far," said Borkus, placing his hand firmly on Giena's head before she could float the upper half of her body away. It seemed that Giena was proud of the fact that she could float with just the upper half of her body and couldn't resist any opportunity to show it off. "So, why?" asked Zadyrus. "The boy once told me that it is difficult for undead to forgive those that they once hated. It's not really that I've forgiven him, but I was satisfied after having defeated him once. I think Giena feels him, but I was satisfied after having defeated him once." "I think Giena feels the same way," said Zandia. When Zandia and Giena faced Mikhail in the training grounds before, when they had still only recovered a small amount of their power, they had stood at a distant spot and fired spells at him endlessly until he fell. Mikhail, unable to leave a certain area or even ready himself for combat unless someone approached him, had simply stood there and received their spells. Giena and Zandia had chosen this method of fighting him because they knew that he was a training dummy and there had been measures taken to ensure that he would not prioritize protecting himself. And after defeating him once, it seemed that their pent-up resentment towards him had faded considerably. "And you're livelier than we are, Borkus, and it's not like the old Talersheim was destroyed by Mikhail alone. I think that the city would have been destroyed in the end even if Mikhail hadn't participated in the battle," said Giena. "What? Are you saying that we'd have lost to the Mage Nation's army without him there?" said Borkus. "Yeah. Though I think we'd have lasted longer. By the time Mikhail joined the war, Princess Livia and the others had already evacuated Talersheim, and the remaining Borkus and the others had been relying on the walls to hold the city. At the time, they had been waiting for reinforcements from the Hartner family, but they now knew that the head of the family at the time had been an elder fundamentalist who had decided to abandon Talersheim and rob the national treasures that were carried by Princess Livia and the other evacuees. Thus, the battle to hold the city had been one where reinforcements would never arrive. With that being the case, the Titans would have had to resist until the Mage Nation and the Amid Empire behind it gave up. But would that have been possible for Talersheim back then? Impossible. "Definitely impossible," said the second princess clearly. "That's not true. If Mikhail wasn't there, we could have won." Borkus protested. "So, do you resent Mikhail, or do you wish for his treatment to be improved? Which is it?" Zadyrus asked. It seemed that Borkus could endure being defeated by a powerful enemy, but the idea of losing to an army of nameless soldiers was something that his pride would not allow. "I understand how you feel, but it can't be helped. Back then, we did have Barajan and Ogbane with us, but we only had one wall and far less people capable of fighting than we do now. And the dungeons were all outside the city, so we couldn't secure food and supplies while holding the city," said Giena. "Of course, I think we could have killed 10 or 20,000 enemy soldiers, but I think we would have been defeated in the end. In Lambda, where there were many with what would seem to be superhuman physical abilities from the point of view of someone from Earth, the tides of battle were often changed by the presence of a single person. However, there was a limit to this. If the Mage Nation and the Amid Empire backing it up were to continuously throw their fighting resources into the battle, if they let their religious fanaticism take over and kept sending in soldiers and knights, closing their eyes to the large number of casualties, Talersheim would likely have fallen even without Mikhail. If it came down to it, the Empire would have sent its own high-class adventurers or used some other equivalent trump card. That's how it is, so my hatred for Mikhail personally is, well, I get the feeling that it's fine now. He spent 200 years being petted by that creepy old man as well, so he's suffered a lot as well," said Zandia. "Yeah, if I had to pick, I'd say I hate that Gubberman and the other pure-breed vampires more. And the Hartner family, the Mage Nation and the Amid Empire. We think they all deserve to be castrated," said Giena. "Giena, nay, don't just include me in your opinion. There were several individuals in Talersheim who were from the Mage Nation, such as the General Ches Heir, who was essentially acting as a prime minister, as well as the Lieutenant General Kurt, but it seemed that Giena and Zandia had no intention of taking out their hatred on such individuals. Incidentally, in the old Talersheim, where the goddess of love and life Vida was worshipped, castration was considered a punishment equivalent to execution or even worse. It was such a severe sentence that it was more of a symbol of fear. It had never actually been carried out in 100,000 years of history. Vandali had already handled the punishment of the Hartner family to some extent, so it might have been painful for the men of the family. Well, if that's your reason, Borkus muttered. For some reason, the conversation turned toward convincing Borkus-san at some point. But I think the most difficult thing is convincing Botchan, said Saria. The boy is the type to hold a grudge, after all, said Zadyrus. The next day, after returning from Barajan's Fall Life Mountain, Borkus requested for Mikhail to be treated as a criminal slave rather than a training dummy, with the same resolve as one intending to leap off a precipitous cliff. Vandali looked at Borkus with even less life in his eyes than usual. The surroundings were littered with gold, silver, iron, copper, obsidian, mithril, adamantite, gemstones, as well as minerals and metals that Borkus and the others hadn't seen before, in lumps of varying sizes. Vandali was sitting on a small mountain of gold, right in the center. To be more specific, you want me to restore Mikhail's freedom to some extent and remove the self-explosive devices? He said. Yeah? Is that too much to ask? Said Borkus. Vandali had a strange, intense aura about him, while Borkus seemed a little timid. Behind them, Zandia was talking to a worried Darsa. He seems a little wild. Did something happen? Zandia asked. About that, he acquired the Glum creation job, and with the effect of the job's skill, he became able to create all kinds of things from nothing. But, what a minute. Create from nothing, you mean the gemstones and precious metals that are lying around? That's right. Also, Vandali has created mithril, adamantite, death iron and dark copper as well, said Darsa, looking like she didn't know why Zandia was surprised at that part, but sounding a little proud nonetheless. Wow, Zandia breathed as she looked around at the minerals and metals scattered around their surroundings once more. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but that's amazing. Isn't it? But you know, he couldn't create orichalcum, Darsa added. No, it would be too incredible if he could, said Zadyrus. If I recall, that is one of alchemy's 3 holy grails, the only one that the boy has not achieved. Vandali, who had become a Glum creator, had tried creating all kinds of materials. Obsidian, marble, ordinary iron, copper, silver and gold, gemstones, as well as aluminium, which was known as aluminium in this world. And then he had tried the materials that he had invented himself, death iron, dark copper, life gold and spirit silver. He had been able to create all of them. The amount of mana required differed based on the quantity and type of material he was creating, but it cost less mana to create large amounts of materials that already naturally existed in large quantities. Thus, he could create iron more easily than copper. Huge amounts of mana were needed to create death iron, dark copper, life gold and soul silver, which didn't exist naturally. So much that it was far more efficient to create iron or copper and then use the ordinary method of pouring death attribute mana into the metals and casting inanimate aging. And creating materials directly into the shapes of tools needed even more mana. It was simple to make sharp points, but creating iron knives or brilliantly cut diamonds needed several times or even several dozen times the ordinary amount of mana. Creating a well-forged death iron sword or dark copper suit of armor could cause even Vandali, who possessed over 1 billion mana, to run out. Overall, it could be described as an ability to create matter from nothing, albeit very inefficiently. If Vandali's mana pool wasn't so great, it wouldn't have been very helpful at all. It would be better to obtain normal metals or precious metals from dungeons or even purchase them. However, Vandali had wanted to be able to create orichalcum. Either that or gain the ability to precisely change and control the shape that orichalcum took. However, he had not gained either of these abilities simply by acquiring the Glum creator job. He's become able to change the shape of orichalcum far more freely than before. But he said that he was unable to completely repair the resurrection device, said Darsa. Zandia looked in the direction that Darsa was looking, and saw the pool that had once contained the quivering lump of flesh, the base of Legion's body, that had been created as a result of activating the incomplete resurrection device. The pool had been filled once more. It was likely that Legion would fuse with it once they returned from leveling. So, he's depressed because of that, said Zandia. A resurrection device, it's hard to make possible what even the goddess herself couldn't do, said Rita. Yes, Saria agreed. The magical resurrection device that could revive the dead if completed. Even with such a device before them, Zandia, Ritu and Saria felt no desire to come back to life. This didn't apply to just them. Almost none of Taylorsheim's undead felt any desire or attachment to the idea of coming back to life. Though it might have been different for ordinary undead. But Borkus-san came at the perfect time, so I'm sure he'll feel better now, Darsa said. Meanwhile, Vandali was requesting something of Borkus. Well then, please move as I move. Put strength into your muscles and put on a side chest pose. And then he made a strange movement. Note, this is the bodybuilder's pose to show off the chest muscles. You can Google it if you want. Yeah, side chest? Side chest. Borkus moved in the same way as he was told, and Gina was joining in for some reason as well. Unlike Vandali's thin body, they had powerful muscles that swelled with a creaking sound. Borkus and Gina were made to perform more bodybuilding poses, one after another. Partway through, they became aware of Vandali's intentions and made their movements smoother and more charming. What should I do? I feel an even higher hurdle to climb than needing a nice body, said Zandia. Apparently surgery to transplant muscles cleanly is harder than breast surgery, said Saria. We don't even have bodies for transplanting to, anyway, said Rita. How about you, Zadaris-san? No, well, the boy should have interests in things other than muscles. I wonder if he does. It's fine, everyone. Vandali will go through puberty soon, said Dasa. After enjoying Borkus and Gina's physical display for a while, Vandali replied calmly. All right. Well then, let us treat Mikhail as a criminal slave. Oh, are you all right with it? Borkus exclaimed. That was unexpectedly quick, Zadiris remarked. I did not think that he would really object, but did he not have the tendency to not forget past grudges? Every seemed surprised that Vandali nodded and agreed to improving Mikhail's treatment, though he would still be a slave. However, Vandali didn't really mind. It's true that I have the disposition of not forgetting grudges. But I don't have any direct grudges towards Mikhail. I do resent him for doing horrible things to Borkus and everyone else, but if Borkus himself says it's alright, then I think it's fine, he said. Grudges were nothing but emotions, after all. Unjustified resentment existed. Grudges were not things that could be held and discarded through logic and reasoning. If that was possible, the world would be a more peaceful place. For that reason, Vandali didn't resent Mikhail particularly fiercely. In fact, in terms of evil acts committed, those of Isla, who was currently in the Dark Knight's order, were far greater in number and severity. That was why Vandali didn't mind if Borkus and the others wanted to allow this. But I can't acquit him, Vandali said. There are still people who resent him, after all. Well, there are numerous other candidates to act as a training dummy in the training grounds, so I'll leave it to them for a while. The undead heroes stolen from Guberman. There were some among them who were members of Vida's races, like Zandia and Gina, but there were more heroes from Alda's side. Some among them had hunted even more of Vida's races than Mikhail to increase their fame. Neither Vandali nor the citizens of Taylorsheim intended to punish those whose names they didn't even know for sins they had committed in the past. However, there were some who had regained their sense of self and were tormented by feelings of guilt, causing them to be in even more confusion than before they had regained sense of self. It seemed that Vandali was thinking of having them serve as training dummies for a certain period, giving them punishment so they could feel less guilty. He had even tried to lessen their feelings of guilt directly with mental encroachment, but they had become too deranged and this had been mostly ineffective. That's how it is, Vandali said. By the way, tomorrow marks the passing of 1 week. Have you finished leveling? The day of departure for the noble Orc Empire was upon them. V6 Character Summary Page. Vandali, Damper, Dark Elf, 9 years old, male. The now 9-year-old protagonist of this series. Having found out for the first time what happened.
Alright, so yep, I'm back. Sorry if the connection was kind of choppy, like I said earlier, or if you haven't heard earlier, due to the signal issues. It was due to the YouTube having some connection errors or something that was going on for a while. But right now, I think it's the stream's health is really good, so no issues for that for now. And yeah, right now, everybody, we have this all wrap up, I think. Yeah, I think it's most already done for what I can see here. Yeah. Yeah, this is the current one that I just finished. Watame and Ina. And yeah, the blending. Oh yeah, it's chef kiss right now. I haven't done something like this for a while, and I'm really satisfied creating this. The black and white element of blending is really beautiful. I would really like to try coloring something like this in the near future. If only I can control color well. My color theory still is a bit in the mediocre side. That's why I always starts with this black and white kind of style before coloring every artwork I do. I do find this kind of appeasing. Let's see if I can fix that with a line art pen. What pen am I using here? Texture pen. Alright. That's yeah, that's better. Okay. Yeah. There are still some few my errors here left and right that I could see, but not as more not as prominent as before. I cleaned up the most obvious ones. And I also returned to Ina and Mel over here and made some few adjustment on Ina's back. I wanted to be more detailed than the last time, and I think I did a very good job. Uh, I obviously just did that because I still have a lot of time left, so yeah, why not improve some parts of it? And also fix some of Lami's hair and some parts that were kind of not really good. Also the fur did some a bit more details. Yeah. All right. Oh, I see that. Like, maybe I could add a bit of a detail here. See some of this. Bam, and blur it each side. There we go. And add a highlight maybe. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so yeah, this is officially done, everybody. And I'm gonna post this in my social media, tag it with all their art tags, and we'll be very happy to also let's see if the time lapse is working. Yep, the recording of the time lapse will be edited probably tomorrow, and I'll upload it. And yeah, I am so happy with this. I think I thank all the everybody who has liked this in my Twitter account, and we're looking forward to me finishing it. And I'm also very thankful for the wonderful tutorials I've seen for this, and some of the samples that I've gathered. I wish I could look at the artist that I was following this, but sadly I didn't manage to put the list on of all of that. Maybe I should really put those names in a wonderful notepad. Okay. Yeah. As we can see here, Mina's back looks a bit bit muscular. Has that good detail on. Her clothes also has a really nice blend. I'm kind of a bit disappointed that I draw Mel in this kind of position. Maybe I should have put her a bit her body a bit on the right side so that you could see a bit more of her body. But now that we've done all the rendering, I don't think I should do the correction for that. But yeah, I should have put her in a better position. But no, not Mel. Uh, Lammy and Ina here looks really cute. I love it, and Ina's cheeky smile that I added. We know what she was doing when she hugged her. A very cultured woman. And right here, oh my goodness, it's the first time I tried rendering girls' armpits, and it turned out really nice. I'll probably get bonk by Ina with this. But yeah, very satisfied with all the outcome. I'll definitely save them all in different PNGs so that yeah I can show it all to you guys individually. But I'll also save this all in one group, and yeah, I think this is a very successful artwork, I think. And thank you guys for watching this stream. I'm very happy for all of the outcomes. If you're just watching the vlog, it's also okay. And please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Yeah, before I close the stream though, yeah, let's talk also about the that Mitchell doesn't have a fourth time. I saw, I kind of got obsessed with the art. Totally forgot about the story to discuss. But yeah, I was still listening, of course. I love the story. And yeah, once again, I still don't like the Rod Courtney's business and his like mindset. Oh my goodness, it's just so stupid. The lack of care for other people, the lack of care of life is just mind-boggling to think that how on earth this person became a god. I know that the author uh, made this as a his ideas, his way of storytelling, but still, it's just it's so frustrating to see such a divine being have this total amount of power to uh, save people, create a wonderful environment for other people, but yet has no care of life, has no care of people's feelings, and it just sucks how to he just deals with all situations, and just technically just deciding to just kill Vandally without even second thinking a second time for maybe having a negotiation with him. It's just hey, here it is me, so I'll just kill him. It's so stupid, and I could see that there are people like that in real life that just disregards people's feelings, disregards people's view in life, and care of people's lives also. And it does kind of sad that yeah, it does causes more pain and affliction, problems in life for most of us because of this selfish people like this. And I think the author's wonderful storytelling here represents that kind of type of people. Hmm. And also now that we have once again, let's probably go to the titans that got rescued, the undead titans. So Zeina and what's her name again? Totally forgot. And I think yeah, the two princesses that were now turned into undead titans. Very interesting. I really love their uh, how the author described the character design. I wish there's an illustration for them. I think I've reached to the very end of this. Uh, yeah, the illustration for the Dead Mission doesn't have a fourth time. The illustration ended at around Let's see. I'm gonna check their wiki, so that if they have any new illustrations for the characters. How do I do this again? But yeah, I do love the characters, the two new characters, and their interaction with Vandally and other people, and them getting operated first before them regaining their personalities back and stuff like that, and them discovering their new bodies are uh, kind of a bit fun for them, but also kind of uh, in their disadvantage also, because they still can't control their new bodies fairly well. But thank goodness that Vandally managed to you know, got uh, their personalities back, and also thanks to the lump of flesh. Was the name Valkyrie? No, I think it was one of uh, one of the people in Love of Flesh Chan who managed to heal the two undead titans. It was good that that happened, because with them, uh, Vandalia gained another source of power, a source of allies for and friends also. And what else happened in that story? I guess not. After that, I think not much, except for the spear dude is about to get slightly pardoned of his sins, and being uh, appealed by Bacchus. I think that's just all. There's some very interesting that just happened. Well, in the near future, they are be the Bravers will be about to reincarnated to the land of Landa, and they're gonna have a clash with Vandali sooner or later. And let's look forward to that, because that would be very interesting. I would really love them interact, their reactions, their interactions, and the conflict that will happen when they eventually meet. And that's just like the first, I know, second batch. Let's just say this is the first batch. Let's not count uh, Kanata's suicidal mission that he did. That was really stupid. But yeah, no. So we have Group A here, Group 1 here, or the first batch from the Bravers going to attack Vandally in the near future, and that will be very exciting. And the next batch, whatever Amamiya Hiroto and the rest of the still living Bravers would do when they get reincarnated to the land of Landa, who knows? Uh, that will also be a very interesting one, because Hiroto and the rest does have somewhat kind of a conscience of them killing Vandally. So let's see what will happen to that. If he would still decide to follow Rod Courtney's plans or something. But yeah. Anyway, I think I really can't find the illustrations. Mm, all pages. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. I think that will be. I really wish to show more of the illustrations for this, but I think I can't find it right now. I'll see if I can do that later on our next stream. But yeah, we finished a very good art over here. The Deadman Show, who doesn't have a fourth time, has getting some really good plot advancement and some. Oh, I should also point out that I really enjoy them cooking around while they're discussing war plans or some death threats and issues like that while they're cooking or doing something productive. And it's the same thing I'm doing here. I'm listening to a story while doing something productive at the same time. But yeah. Okay, guys. Once again, if you like this series, leave a like and subscribe. And this is your boy Shrimp, the Prodigal Shrimp, and I'm happy with this outcome. And I'll see you again next time. Peace.